Hello, good morning. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to put it on Do Not Disturb so no one can disturb our practice. So I posted on my Facebook story sort of a rough intention for the weekly classes, a schedule of sorts, so there will be some predictable pattern if indeed we're still in this current state of shelter at home for more weeks to come, which it seems like that's the case. It's going to be some more weeks. So we're starting week 3, at least here in Massachusetts. And yeah, the novelty has worn off. I've been enjoying staying at home, but I'm feeling a little restless. And so let's just see what comes. So I invite you to have a couple of blocks, blanket and a belt, per usual. And let's start sitting on our blocks in Virasana. So you could sit on one flat block, depending on what your knees allow you to do. You could sit on that block a little higher, or 2 blocks. But have it so both your sit bones are on the block. So don't have the block lengthwise under you, have it widthwise. You can sort of catch the outer edge of the block with your heels, or feel the feet up against the outer edges of the block, and simply land your 2 sit bones without too much presentation. Just land, feel, land, pause, and then feel. Let's start with the grossest layer of the physical body. And what's here for you today? What does the body have to say to you today? And whether it's a message of well rested and good health, or fatigue, or maybe bad food choices, whatever is here with you now, I encourage you to include it. Recognize the state of things, accept that that's the state of things. Maybe we'll just leave it at that. No need to inquire just now. And just under the layer of the physical body, what's the energy body, like the prana body? So what's the quality of your breath? And it doesn't have to be big to have high quality. Last time we were together on Saturday morning, I was exploring and encouraging the exploration of small breath, little breath, tiny breath. And can there be a quality of support and nourishment regardless of the size of the breath? Can simply knowing of breath, feeling movement of breath, gentle guiding of breath, can that be nourishing enough? And I'm simply going through the koshas here as defined by yoga. So the physical body, then the energy body. So the Manomaya kosha and I'm forgetting the name of the outermost sheath. So we checked in with the food body, and the second one is the Pranamaya kosha. Then we go to the Manomaya kosha, the quality of the mind state. What's the quality of your mind like? Is it cloudy? Is it sleepy? Is it jumpy? Is it hyper alert? Is it receptive? Is it ping-ponging everywhere? And simply noticing and allowing. It'll change as we go, likely. And then underneath the Manomaya Kosha is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the wisdom body. So whatever the physical, the energetic, and the mind body have presented to you this morning, is there some layer of wisdom under that, knowing that no matter how comfortable or uncomfortable we're feeling at those levels, it will change. And whether our changes are for better or worse, or in line with our desires, or organizing around our fears, can we still stay with what's here and relate in whatever capacity we have? And through that relating, that accepting, that communing, that yoging, it will change, probably more in line with what's needed, regardless of hopes and fears. And underlying all of this, if we can get underneath all of this, is the bliss body, or what's known as the Anandamaya Kosha, that at our deepest level, in our heart of hearts, there is an abiding joy. Simply appreciating the preciousness of this life and the preciousness of the reflective capacity, consciousness, the appreciation of the love and the connections that are everywhere, even when we're in a room all by ourselves. And so if you feel a sense of that, and you might not, and that's reasonable, struggle is real, but if you have a glimpse of that place in you that is unchanging, it never dies, it's always awake, it's always a refuge, if you have a tendril into that place, nourish that. Even as we move and work hard and do asana. We're going to start easy though, so return to the felt sense of your sit bones on your block. And dive your right sit bone down into the block a little bit more clearly, like you're standing on your right sit bone. It will probably create a tiny little side bend. And then stomp down gently, lovingly on your left sit bone. And feel how it creates a little more space through your left side of your spine most directly, but side body too. Go back to the right, and let's teeter-totter right and left, right and left. And so I'm feeling for the reaching down, the rooting of alternate sit bones, and the corresponding lengthening of side spine right to left, all the way up to the top of the ear, or all the way up to the molars in the top of your mouth. A few other minor details. Can you feel even weight, even pressure, equal amount of power pressing through each sit bone as you go? Or is one sit bone sort of wimpy? Or is there some congestion around the hip? And if so, then you puzzle around it, right? Don't just force your way, but maybe you stay with that one side repeatedly and like, how can I get more connected to you? How can you get more connected to Earth? How? Not you must. And also the sense of accessing the same place in both sit bones. So the sit bones aren't a pinpoint. They're not quite as big as the surface of like your knuckles, but they have some surface area and they're a little like bony, knobby shaped. Can you sense like you're dropping down right to left, somewhere in the similar vicinity? It feels sort of the same right to left. As much as you can, invite it to feel the same right to left. And begin to make the movement smaller and smaller, lesser and lesser. And I'm actually, as I shrink the movement, I'm going to make it a little bit quicker. So the way that a bouncing ball might bounce big and slow at first, then as it starts to settle down, as entropy sets in, it just a little faster, a little softer. So now I'm just right and left, and letting that get smaller, 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 so that it seems like there's stillness in there, and the physical outer sheath is still. And I recently came across a quote by Eric Schiffman about moving into stillness. Moving into stillness doesn't mean there's no movement inside. It means there's no struggle. There's no wishing for something different. There's down on the ground, basic acceptance of this moment. Brush the breath up and down the spine a few times. I don't care how big or small. And with your hands on your hips, feel the levelness of the two hip points in front. There's an anatomical name for those hip points. Anterior superior iliac spine, ASIS, or as is for short. So keep a hold of your left one and pluck that right foot forward on the mat in front of you, and then reconnect with that right one. So that hip point is higher now. It's probably a little out to the right, and it's probably further back behind you, behind your left one. It's not behind you because it's anterior. It's in the front of you. And simply catch now both hands around that right shin. And can you stay really tall and lifted up, but also fold that right knee in so the foot comes off the floor. So I feel, in spite of sitting up tall, that the weight goes more posteriorly, goes back on that right sit bone. If you can get a sense of where your tail is, right in the middle of the two sit bones, it should be straight down and not scooping to your right. That might be hard to avoid. See what you can do. And then let's replace that right foot back to where it was. Hip point, check in, level in theory, pretty level. Pluck left foot forward, check in with hip points. Left hip point is a little bit more to the left, probably a little bit further back and higher. We can accentuate that, catching the hands around the left shin. Stay sitting tall as you hug that left knee in more and more and more. So compressing in the front of the hip and working the two SI joints, still standing tall on the two sit bones, but you're more on the back edge of your left sit bone. Put that foot down. Bring your right foot forward too. So now we're in a squat. If your hips are so low, maybe just on the one block that the squat is sort of pushing you backwards, then bring the other block underneath you. I'd like to have the feet as close underneath you as possible. So knees and feet are like hip width apart, maybe feet a tad wider, but pull those feet right under you. Nice tight little squat here. And then with elbows on knees, can you press down and creep, eke your rib cage higher? And then maybe, just maybe, get your armpits right over your kneecaps. So like the yang of the kneecap and the yin of the armpit. And I'm just going to place my hands on the floor here to further seal up armpit pressure. So one of the boons, if we go to arm balances today, it's sort of my plan, but we'll make all the shapes before we even do them. So you don't have to balance on your hands necessarily. But if you can here, get knees in your armpits, the boon is pressure on all those lymph nodes. That's the real boon, according to what I've come to learn about physiological responses to asana, other than the concentration required and the deep belly strength required to be on your hands. and an arm balance. I'm going to let my head go. Breathe into back body. Feel big spread across back ribs, kidneys, back of pelvis. And then from here, straighten your legs, tip the hips up, head down. And I'm just going to keep my feet right in place and bend one knee at a time. You have another block if you need it. If your hands do not get to the floor, use your second block. And I'm simply offering an unfolding to the knees and a little bit of squiggling around here. One knee at a time, bending, spreading rib cage right to left. Letting head swing opposite the ribs towards the bent knee. We're going to come to sit back down again, and some of you are going to want the block to be higher. Maybe stack your second block on there. Because what I'd like to do is a seated figure four. So I'm going to keep my block on its low side because it's not super challenging for me to bring the right foot up in a figure four. So the left foot could be further forward. That could be your entry point, having that left foot quite forward and crossing the right ankle over the left knee. Either sitting on the two blocks and or having left foot forward, eventually inviting, maybe not today or even this year, but a full folded left knee. Left foot sort of right under that sit bone and the spine nice and tall. And I've simply wrapped my arms around my right foot and I'm doing a little wobble right to left. If you cannot find a seated position with your figure four, then simply lay on your back and do figure four on your back. The spine will be sort of forced to be straighter. You won't struggle with as much with rounding backwards. So a little wobble right to left, and I'm sending breath down into my two pelvic halves, and again notice the asymmetry of the two sit bones. So ideally they're both equally heavy, but you're more on the back side of your right sit bone. Now if pulling the right leg up into figure four really shortened that right side, then I invite you to try to reach through right side body, right side lung, right side psoas, all the way down to that right sit bone, and try to dive it, root it, grow it downwards more. And let that invite a more lengthening uprightness through the right side. Switching sides, however you want to get there. You might need to straighten that right leg out as a little counter pose, rock the ankle. And then if you had to start with the down leg forward, do that here. And then however much you can bend the down leg, in this case the right leg, under you. Step one, check it out, arrive like you're stepping into a brand new room for the first time, or a brand new garden, or a new temple, some new space you've never been in before. And science tells us that we usually see the things that we think we're going to see. That there's some capacity to get stuck in a false reality by just looking for the things we already know. It's called delusion. And there's all sorts of ways, according to yoga, that it trips us up. But from here, this first step into this left hip in this way, what's new and unusual? What's something you can relate to? Namely, that rooting down of the left sit bone, even though you're on the back edge of it. As if you could breathe in a way that your left lung reaches down and touches, massages with breath that left hip. And let's free the left leg. Go ahead and extend it a little bit out to the side. Point and flex the foot. Undo the compression and then remove the block from behind you and come to lay on your back with your knees bent, feet on the floor. All right. Have your knees and feet hip width, and you could touch your hip points again. Small movement, right knee. So before I say that, feet stay on the ground. Don't move your feet. Simply the right knee is going to reach a little bit forward away from you and a little bit across to the left. So it's not a big movement at all. And then let it return, and then the left knee reaches a little forward and a little right. And then right knee goes. So alternating. It's almost like you're trying to reach that kneecap across the room and a little to the opposite side. This will likely tip the pelvis by way of moving the legs, moving the pelvic halves right to left. So you go right SI joint to left SI joint, right SI joint to left SI joint. And if one side, right or left, feels wimpy or achy or caught, you can't drop it, then simply rock repeatedly to that side. Just invite it with a little bit more intention to bring it along. But please notice with your hands on your hip points that the hip point follows the knee. We could also say the heel bone, the sit bone follows your heel bone. That the legs and the pelvic halves and the feet, they all go together. So when it comes to extreme positioning, like one hip in full flexion, one hip in full extension, we want the pelvic halves to go. So let this rocking movement come back to the center. Hands on hip points. Play with right foot floating off the floor a little bit. And then bring in the right knee towards your chest and following that hip point as it goes. So it dives further back, just like when we were sitting, a little out to the side, then plop, right foot to the floor. Left foot lifts and the knee falls in and in and in, and then plop. So do this right to left, as heavy as the thigh bones can be, as little muscles as you can use. Like use your breath, use the exhale to invite the knee in. Feel the whole pelvic half roll with the leg falling in, rolling on that SI joint. One more time, left side. And then from here, both hips up, both feet down. Not your biggest bridge. Shove the shoulders back. Squeeze the shoulders gently back. Don't slam them together behind you, but dive them into the floor so none of your spine is on the floor. Like there's a little canal your shoulder blades make so your spine isn't heavy on the ground. And then now, right foot lifts and leg falls in. Considerably harder, right? So notice the firmness, the erectness of the stable leg hip point. And then can you let the moving leg hip point fall back and back and back and back? You can think of the moving leg also in relationship to the sit bone. The sit bone's coming forward and up, forward and up. So down leg, the stable leg has to get really firm. That sit bone is going towards its own heel. The upper leg sit bone is going towards its own heel. Now, if you do not have a sense of that, you might have sacral pain, you might have SI joint pain. Don't do anything that hurts, please. Make the movements really small. Go back to what we were doing before. Find what you can find. Find what you can manage inside the invitation. Doesn't have to be as big and strong and dramatic as it could be. All right. Hips down, knock your knees together, take your feet wide, pause. We're going to do one more little strength move here for the SI joint and pelvis, and then we're going to change it up a little bit. So come back to that soft bridge, not your biggest bridge. And in fact, with your elbows next to you on the floor, can you touch with your fingers the top of your pelvis? Have your fingers on your as-is. Now, the invitation is to one at a time lift the feet, but very small lift, barely off the floor. And when you do it, do not let the pelvic halves change levels. So can you not let the lifting leg pelvic half drop? So again, you're not bringing the foot all the way in, you're barely picking it up off the floor. So the heel is staying down, picking it off the floor an inch. And then try to not let that hip point fall at all. Can you keep the pelvis perfectly level with just the strength of one leg? And the answer might be no way in hell. So you try. You do what you can. And this is a movement I learned from a PT to help with SI dysfunction and lumbar dysfunction. So if you fall into those categories, lumbar dysfunction, SI dysfunction, please treat this like medicine and don't do anything that hurts. If it hurts, it's clearly not your medicine. But is there a way that you could engage with the movement, no pain? OMG, okay. I'm gonna roll down spine by spine. All the thoracic vertebra before the top lumbar, then those middle lumbar, which is really hard, before the top of the sacrum, and then landing. Shoot left leg long, press left leg into floor behind you. So punch out through the heel. Try to squeeze the leg backwards without clenching your bum. Just heavy that leg, plug it into the ground. Keep it there. Don't let it bow up at all as you start to fold the right knee in. So, first stage for me is I simply catch the right knee with a straight arm, still trying to commit to back of left leg on the floor. Now, if you got any kind of booty, you have to let that smash and be flat. If you're squeezing your left butt cheek, you're going to pop right up off the floor. And so, as I pull the right knee in, staying committed to left leg, it's clear to me first just the hip socket, just the thigh bone moving in the hip socket. But as I commit to left leg heavy, and I keep pulling the right leg in lovingly, the hip exhausts its movement, and then the SI joint has to move. So now I'm feeling a little more contrast between the two legs. The challenge to keep the left leg down is real, and I'm folding more right leg in, feeling more of my lumbar spine merge down with the floor because the SI joint is in, I think they call it nutation, or I don't know the anatomical name of what the SI joint is doing, but the pelvic half itself, as that hip point goes out and back, the pelvic half is abducting, abducting. Keep the interlaced hands, slip them behind the hamstring, straighten that right leg up to the sky. So that might fully extend your arms, depending on what your right leg could do. So now it's a casual, non-dramatic challenge. Hopefully it's not dramatic. Strength of right thigh meeting whatever length in your left hamstring. So just let there be a steady, quiet standoff between those two energies. And with your hands on your leg, you could certainly tug that skin down the leg. That might help take the edge off the sit bone, which is ideal. That's where most hamstring tears happen. Or, you could tug the flesh up the leg. If your left leg is flat to the floor and if your right leg is lightning rod straight, then you could walk your hands up. Invite and allow the right sit bone to follow the heel without the right waist shortening. So just a super slow-mo climbing into Supta Padangusthasana 1, which means supine hand to big toe pose, or supine Padangusta, limb of the foot, limb of the big toe pose. And then release, right foot to the floor, pause. Let the right knee start to fall to the right, but keep your left butt cheek heavy, unchanged on the floor. So we're asking now the right pelvic half to do further abduction with a little less flexion in the hip. So it's like a supine tree pose, supine tree pose. And just let the groin lengthen, let the inner thigh lengthen. But the gathering of the belly and the weight and the energy, the prana is loaded on your left side. And then take your two arms overhead and stretch and reach them opposite that left foot. And see if you can find a through line from your hands to your foot. And then big toe of the right foot reaches to the floor. Let that help swing the knee up. And then right leg goes long. And maybe here, softly let things go a little slack and point and flex the feet, point and flex the feet. And if you point and flex the feet in a way that the heels sort of stay stuck to the ground, the whole body will shimmy. The whole body will shimmy and shake with your pointing and flexing feet. I love it. And then suddenly let it go. Pa. Back to neutral legs. Commit to that right leg, flat to the floor, flat finger quotes. Your leg won't be flat, but see what you can do. And then bend left knee, put left foot on floor. Ideally, you feel your right hamstring on the floor. That's hard. It's ideal. See if you can do it. And then catching with a straight arm your left kneecap with your left hand. And so to some degree, it's mostly hip socket movement here. Thigh bone and hip socket. We have not probably gotten much movement in the pelvic half. A little bit. There's a lot of factors. Speaking generally here, and as you pull the right knee in, now the challenge to keep, left knee, pulling left knee in. The challenge is to keep the right thigh on the floor as I feel more and more SI joint involvement on my left side, more and more of my pelvic half going into abduction. Not the leg, but the pelvic half. That hip point's going wide and back, just like before. Keep squeezing left knee and keep committing to the right leg long and straight and long and straight and heavy. And right leg being, same right leg being long and straight, but left leg being hugged in, folded in, squeezed in. Slip the hands into the back of the leg, so interlace fingers on hamstring fibers, and straighten your left leg without losing any contact with your right leg on the ground. So it's a slow-mo endeavor. Ideally, your feet are not just floppy fish there on the end or not wilted petals, but however you choose to work the feet, I recommend consciousness in the feet and variables, so creating a little bit of variety of movement so you don't get stuck in that big toe. Both feet, right foot too. I'm pointing my right toes. I don't know if you can see them. Yeah, sort of. One leg is always sort of remedial, right? So left hamstring is usually the tighter hamstring in people, not always, but most often. And so, a little more patience, a little more kindness with this side. If you're a parent, if you raised kids, if you raised more than one kid, you know they don't all need the same kind of responses. They don't all need the same kind of treatment. And then when you're ready, foot on floor. Knee slowly tips out to the left without taking any weight out of your right butt cheek. So that requires some negotiation between the two legs. That requires the belly to choose sides, right? Belly's like, oh, I'm totally with the right side here. You stay heavy. You can take your two arms up. Either hook your thumbs or interlace your fingers, release the index finger long and stretch. Find a through line from your fingers to your right leg. And then next exhale, both knees come in enough. Curl your torso in enough. Kneecaps and eyeball sockets try to touch. And then shoot right leg up, left leg long, not to the floor, but as if it was going to go there. Press it towards floor, but don't let it land. Take both arms all the way across to the outside of your right leg. Hello. And then you're going to switch. I think we did this Saturday. And switch. And every time you come up and over and across, can you be on a different place on your ribs? Can you be on a different place on your back? Switch. Switch. You could go much faster if you must. I don't recommend it though. Switch. And switch. And we're going to go back to the second side and grab one of your blocks. Rock yourself up so you're balancing on your bum. Somewhere behind your somewhere behind your shit bones, also known as sit bones, and a little bit on your sacrum. And if you put the block on your 2 feet, and then what about just like tossing the block up in the air with your feet and catching it, grabbing it if you drop it with your feet. Just play a game of catch. Oops, I have another block within reach. Play another game of catch with yourself, your feet, and your block. So I'm trying to land it on my shins. And then I toss it in there and I try to catch it. So from catching it to landing it on my shins, which is harder, you could just toss it up and try to catch it. Repeatedly. Another 30 seconds. Don't lose hope. Laughing makes it harder. Shit. Come to lay on your belly. However you want to get there, come to lay on your belly. Sphinx pose might be in order. In your Sphinx pose, turn the tops of your feet into like big fins. Reach longer through the big toe. Can you, even if your big toe is actually shorter than all the other toes, mine is, can you imagine reach it as if it was going to be the longest toe ever? And then click the pinky toenails into the floor. And whether you can feel your your as-is, whether you can feel your hip points on the floor or not, if you can feel them on the floor, it might be an easier biofeedback. But whatever the case, you know where they live. Can you exhale them towards each other a little bit? transversus, your deepest abdominal muscle, deepest layer of abdominal wall muscles. Hip points narrow towards each other, big toes longest, pinky toes flat. One more breath, lifting tonsils up, lifting top of head up. And I've got my hands in prayer position here. Elbows under shoulders, outer wrists heavier. So can you tip the 10 fingers skyward? This will shorten the thumb side of your wrist. And then from here, if you try to shove the mat a little bit forward, try to shove the mat forward in front of you and maybe come to balance or rest or press on those outer wrists and grow the spine up a little higher. Optional, don't do anything that hurts. And then I'm going to lower down, widening elbows, lengthening belly on the floor, forehead down. Go ahead, shake your booty, waggle your bum. And then from here, bend your knees, bring the soles of the feet or the inner edges of the feet together and take the knees wide apart so that the soles of your feet can come together. So knees are wide apart. We did this one last week at some point. Dragging sole of right foot along the inner left thigh. So the right ankle, inner ankle goes towards floor. And then drag that right foot up your inner left thigh till you feel the feet touch. And then left foot, drag it down. I'm saying thigh, I mean to say calf. Inner right calf. So like sole of left foot to the right knee and then switch. Right foot slides along inner left calf, down and then up. And left foot goes down and up. And so you might notice that your pelvis is tipping right and left. A little bit. What if you minimize that? What if you minimize how much the pelvis moved? So if you can manage to do that, you might notice that now more is being asked of the muscles around the outer hip because the thigh bone is doing the movement in theory exclusively. The thigh bone's rotating that hip socket and we're not letting the two SI joints move much. So that's a choice you can make depending on what you're after. I need to do more stabilizing on one side and less stabilizing on the other side just because of the habits that are there. Slowly use this movement to walk the knees towards each other so the movement will get as small. Toes towards you, they won't get very far. And then pubic bone very heavy. And notice what you did to make your pubic bone heavy. Did you squeeze your bum? And if you did, clench your ass. Can you make your pubic bone heavy by any other means? Belly muscles lift, deep rotator muscles, pull the tail forward. Can you still narrow your hip points? If you haven't lifted up your head and shoulders, little baby sphinx, do it here. And envision, feel, pretend that your breastbone and your heel bones can go further and further and further apart. So you're really engaging those thighs. And then slide the 10 toes back. Bring your head back to your hands. And small lifts, one leg at a time. So straight leg. Try to lead from that longest big toe. So the inner leg that we just sort of worked on in the previous move, the inner leg is really clearly lifting as high as the outer leg here. And we can lift the leg so high that the whole back body grips and recruits to bring the leg up. Or we could lift the leg so low that all you're using is your hamstring. The bum, the glutes don't come online to lift the leg until the leg gets high enough that the hamstrings cannot do it alone. And once you start to recruit high enough up, the pelvic half is going to move a lot. And so the lifting leg hip point should dive into the floor. Lifting leg hip point should press down into the floor and actually slide inside your skin down towards your toes. Next time the right leg is up, keep it there. Bend the right knee. Push the right foot to the ceiling, like you want to put a footprint on the ceiling. Big toe is the reachiest, big toe ball mound. Pause here in little pulses. Try to make little footprint on the ceiling repeatedly. Pulse and pulse. So small that I couldn't see it from the outside looking in. And then keep it up there, re-straighten it. Lift the whole leg higher. Feel the hip point dig down deeper. And then let that right leg go down. Shake your booty. Left leg lifts, bends the knee, sole of foot clearly to the ceiling. Inner edge of the foot, the big toe side of the foot is leading the way. And needle footprint and pulse, teeny tiny pulses. Teeny tiny, itsy bitsy, barely visible. Keep it up there, straighten the leg, lift the whole thing a little higher, and then down it goes. Interlace your hands behind your pelvis, forehead on the floor. Pause here, stretch your arms back, squeeze your shoulder blades back. From your forehead to your pubic bone, let me start over. Feel your forehead and your pubic bone heavier in the floor than, say, your belly. So can you use the 2 points, the 2 ends of your spine, going for forehead and pubic bone? They're sort of the ends of your spine and the front part of your body. Can you use those points sort of rooting down to feel a lift and a gathering under your throat, under your ribs, under your belly? So laying face down on the floor, invite the front of your body to engage. Keep that engagement, deep front engagement, and then look your eyes forward, reach your face forward, shins heavy, make your feet really heavy, and then bring your chest up. And underlying this back bend is that deep front gathering we did a minute ago. Hands are still interlaced behind. Keep your left hip point very heavy and roll the upper body a little to the right. And then swing back through center. It's like a hands-free cobra. And then roll the upper body a little to the left. Keep your right hip point heavy. And then through center. And so can you keep the lower body like glued to the floor? Hip points, shins, and feet. And get any kind of freedom to lift and turn the upper body. So belly has to be really gathered. And as you go right to left, find a slightly different pathway each time. And so as you roll the right shoulder back and over, that right hip has to go forward and down. Next time you come back from the left side, you're in the middle, pause. Free the hands, so arms back and wide. Now lift your legs. Everything lifts. Little bit of freedom here. And the hands can land right under your shoulders and push yourself up through cobra, maybe up dog, depending on your skill level. And then to hands and knees. Hands and knees. Find some cat-cows. And And then if you put your brain back in the area of sit bones and tail, they are not one unit, sit bones and tail. You got 3 different units. Right sit bone and the pelvic half is one whole unit. Your tail is one unit. Your left pelvic half sit bone is one unit. And they can all move independently. Not a lot, but enough that we can walk and go up and down stairs and have babies and do lotus pose. So the inquiry here is, if you can find your tail, can you invite movement between head and tail first before the sit bones follow? So if you need a visual, it probably won't be easy to see it all. I'm going to start in cat pose, and my intention is to move my head and tail as I inhale before the sit bones. Here I go. Now my sit bones come on. And from the cow, my intention is to move my head and tail before my sit bones go. It's a nanosecond, and it's just a fraction of movement, but can you get in there and find that? So pelvic floor musculature, refining all the connections. The pelvic floor muscles, there are many, and there's 2 layers. And there's muscles that connect tail. There's muscles that connect sit bone to pubis. Cat pose, and then keep that lift in the belly as you soften to a neutral spine, just like we were laying on the floor but engaging the abdomen. And then stretch the 2 legs back, come to stand on the ball mounds of the feet. And then barely touch one knee to the floor and then re-straighten. And barely touch the other knee to the floor and re-straighten. Now, can you do this without anything else moving? Obviously, the leg and the pelvic half are moving, right? But your hips are not swinging side to side. Tail is not swinging side to side if you can feel it. Last time, left side. Walk hands back towards feet. Find an Uttanasana, and I invite you to interlace your hands behind you again. This time elbows are soft. Don't lock your elbows out here. Keep the heels of the hands close but not clamped together. And then wrap the arms over the back of your head any amount. I like to punch through the backs of the wrists, creating a little more spread across the chest, even as the shoulder heads wrap forward. Come rolling on up. Bend your knees a lot as you come up. Keep your arms back. So chair pose with hands interlaced behind. Squeeze shoulders back and pull navel back. So it's not easy. Sitting as low as you can, keeping weight in the heels. Shoulders are active and retraction. Belly is active, also hugging back, retracting. And thighs are active as you try to sit down without collapsing the chest. And then slowly come to stand. Keep hands interlaced behind if you can. And step your right foot forward and spin that left heel flat to the floor. So you got the back leg turned out. Pyramid stance, or also known as Parsvottanasana stance. Give the shoulders a squeeze again. Actually, let's take a moment to feel the pelvis. So both hands on hips. Notice your left hip point is lower than your right. Should be going down and forward. And your right hip point should be going back and out a little bit. Up and back and out. Then reinterlace the hands. Index fingers long. Dive those fingers straight down like as a representation of your tail clearly in the middle with the two hips doing their thing, and then take your heart up. Take the bridge of your nose up, and take your face up, and really stand clearly on both heels. Left heel like a kickstand, right heel like a brace, up and up and up and up. And then interlacing, nope, release the arms and wrap the arms around. So eagle arms, right elbow under. If you can get, nope, left elbow under. You get your left elbow under. And if you're new to this, good luck. You got to wrap your wrists across each other so your palms come palm to palm. Eagle arms, left elbow under, and then stepping onto that right foot to wrap the left thigh over. And as you do that, can you envision the left pelvic half wrapping around the front, bringing as much of that hip around as possible. If you can get the shins to intertwine behind you, start to sit down, squeeze the legs against each other, take the elbows up. And then from here, keep the intertwined legs, hands to the floor, untangle left leg, step it back to a lunge. Pause here. Push the right foot into the floor and feel that right sit bone curl under towards it. And then as you reach the heart and the face forward, feel the left heel reach away from the heart and the face. And then push the right foot into the floor and feel the right sit bone curl under. And then reach your heart and your left heel away from each other. And keep that up. All the while, can you hug the two pelvic halves into each other? Feel the pelvic floor narrow right to left. And then plant your hands, step your right foot back, down dog. Get your hands and feet organized. And then, same leg gets the juice. Left leg goes back and up in the air. Can you keep turning that left hip point down and forward? A little bit of a right knee bend. Feel the right sit bone curl towards your own right heel. And left leg goes higher and higher. Maybe you walk your hands closer. I don't know, maybe not. And then I'm going to do both dogs. Walk hands forward, both feet on the floor. I'm actually going to come all the way to belly down. And then little locust, both legs back. Hands under shoulders. Push arms straight to push legs down. Up dog if you want it, or cobra. And then back to the down dog. Take your time to walk your hands back. This time interlace your hands behind your head. Elbows hug the sides of the head like blinders on a horse. Reach the elbows towards your own ankles. Lift the kneecaps to the sky. And then bend your knees a lot. See if you can get kneecaps in armpits. We did this before. You can bring the hips almost as low as the knees. Pause them there and then roll the spine up. Same thing, Utkatasana, but now the head and the hands have this conversation going. You gotta reach your elbows up, press your head back, drop the bottom ribs, drop the sit bones. And use the hands behind the head to give a little bit of a charge to the reaching of the bridge of the nose up, and then come to stand. Release your arms. And let's take left foot forward. Right foot back, heels in a line, right toes turned out. Right toes turned out, but the hips aren't. So right hip point, if you catch hips, right hip point going down, in, and forward. Left hip point going up, out, and back. Interlace hands again behind you. Can you find your tail in the middle of that, straight down, not curving, not twisting? And the answer is probably no, at least on, excuse me, on one side. It's harder to get the pole star position for the tail on one side. The tighter side, bridge of nose up. Like there's something on the ceiling that you want to touch with the tip of your nose or with your lips or the tip of your tongue. Up, up and up and up and up. Maybe your bottom teeth go up. And then bring head to neutral. Wrap arms forward. This time for real, the right arm is under. Right leg up and over. And as you bring the leg up and over, bring that whole pelvic half with you. It's a whole lot easier on the knees and in general, I think, to get the wrap. Now squeeze, squeeze and shrink down. Squeeze and compact down. Whoa, whoa, it's tricky. Elbows up, belly back. Undo, land in the left foot forward, lunge, simple lunge, pause. And like shove that left foot down. Feel a tiny cat pose come online. Left sit bone curls forward. And then reach the right heel and the bridge of your nose away from each other. And then stomp that left foot down and gather that left sit bone under you. And then reach right heel and heart forward. And feel the pelvic floor continue to narrow. And your hips get more and more compact. One more breath. Use the combo of the gathering of those two legs in their own way to pick up that left foot, step it back to plank, slowly lower. Pubic bone and breastbone touch at the same time. Belly's lifted. Both legs up, both arms back and up. Woohoo! Hands plant under shoulders. Just rock on the pelvis and thighs till the feet come down. Reach head up, up dog. Back to down dog. Okay. So you guys take a break, take a seat, take a drink. Checking the time here. We're gonna hone in on a couple of arm balances and then cool down with some side bending. So walk your hands back to your feet. Feet hip width and then come into your squat. Heels don't have to be on the ground, but can you get your kneecaps and your armpits to couple up again? And maybe heels off the ground. So if your heels on the ground, you can use the blanket. If you're like bouncing on the balls of the feet, and I'm gonna ask you to get your heels to the ground, you can put a blanket, a folded blanket, or roll blanket under your heels if you need it. And then I'd like to play with, so another trick is to grab the mat in front of you and to sort of shove the mat out from underneath you and use that to drive the heels down. Whatever the case, whether you have a blanket under your heels and or you're using the mat, can we flirt with the idea of keeping the thighs and the ribs disconnected? So I can feel my legs up against my torso. I want to keep that and play with the idea of straightening my legs some. So I can get this straight, no problem. All right, if I want to get straighter, tucking the hands behind the heels here, widening the feet a little bit, and then playing with the idea of straightening, 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 straightening. And then folding back down into the lunge, or squat. It's going to be one of those days, apparently. Thighs and ribs connected, hips up, hips up, hips up. Widen the feet as much as necessary. Straighten those legs as much as you can. Doesn't matter what it looks like, no one can see you. And then back to the squat. And then one more. From here, walk hands forward, step feet back, down dog. And then catch your 2 blocks. I like to put one block at the inner thighs, way up there. And then the other block on its wide side between your 2 ankles. And you got to squeeze. So you got 2 blocks squeezed. Squeeze between your 2 legs. Sort of looks like this. All right, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Down dog. Plank pose. Bring that block between your ankles with you. Squeeze, and can you tip the whole thing onto the outer right foot and lift the left arm up. And switch sides. So now, wait, before you switch sides, take a break if you need to. The whole left side has to move together. So find that deep midline and like roll that left side over it. Keep that deep midline and roll the left side under it as you come to the outer edge of your left foot. Narrow the hip points, squeeze the blocks together. Find that deep midline and roll the right side over it all at once. Each side again. Squeeze the blocks, squeeze the blocks, squeeze the blocks. Deep front gathered. And now you're going to roll the left side all the way over that deep front line and then underneath it to get the right side on top. Squeezing the blocks really reveals to me where I let some of my parts fade back or forward. It's challenging my balance here. And then back to all 4 feet on the floor, back to down dog. Walk your hands back, grab your 2 blocks out from between your legs and walk them forward. Hands on blocks, dog. Hands on blocks, dog. And then stepping your right foot forward onto the block that your right hand is on. And then maybe that right hand can go to the floor behind it. And simply work this action of thigh and torso squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Switch. Right hand goes where right foot is. Right foot steps back. Left foot goes where left hand is. Left hand comes to the floor behind the foot. Hug me in. Feel that big contrast between the 2 pelvic halves. I'll speak to it. Left hip point is back and wide and higher. And the right hip point is forward and narrow and lower. Switch. Left hand goes where the foot is. Foot steps back. Come to plank pose. Make your blocks wide enough for your chest to fit. And then lower down chaturanga all the way down. Squeeze your shoulders back. Let your forehead come to the floor. Pause. Reconnect with the gathering between pubis and forehead. Let the weight of the front body on the floor be an invitation to gather that front body backwards. Keep it gathered. Reach the big toes the longest. Then reach your face forward. And what if you tried to push your blocks forward? Let that peel your chest up. And then exhale, navel back, down dog. Right foot steps where right hand is. Right hand comes behind the block. Maybe out to the side of the block. Right? So I saw a chick do this on Instagram. I'm not so into the looky yoga culture, but you just can't avoid it. I can't avoid it when I'm on social media. It's everywhere. So, but this intrigued me. I haven't done it before, so let's see what happens. Right hand's on the floor, left hand's on the block, right foot's on the block. Can you step your left foot forward and swing it under? My right hand came off the floor a little bit. And then hips up and take that leg back again. Hiya, switch. I'm gonna walk my setup back a little bit. Left foot steps forward onto the block. Left hand comes around maybe to the side of the block. Narrow the pelvic floor, lift that low belly, lift your right foot. I'm gonna get on my left fingertips and sweep the right leg forward. Left foot on the block. It's hard as hell. And then back. Hiya, hiya. Holy mackerels. Hands on blocks, dog. Next stage of this, hands stay on block. Right foot steps forward. Can you have both foot and hand on block? So I've got my heel, right heel sort of in between thumb and index finger. Then can you step up left foot, swing it forward, and as you come to sit on the air, pick the right foot up off the block. Right foot goes back onto the block, left foot sweeps back. Holy crap. Kneeling pause. We got one more to do, and we'll see if we can do it regular style. Whatever that means. Hands on blocks. Left foot steps onto the block where your left hand is. Can you get heel of hand and heel of foot on the same block? I'm going to use both hands and the left foot to bring the right foot forward. And as I sit down, eventually both legs come up. And you imagine that left foot sort of stomping on the block like it was before. Go ahead, find the block, swing the right foot back, come on out, have a seat. Okay, that was intense. And release hands behind. Hang on tightly to finger webbing. Elbows are bent and like you're gonna try to pull the wrists apart. Squeeze the shoulder blades back. And then find a sitting place on the floor between your two blocks. And let's hike the right shin up onto the shoulder like a giant backpack or like a bazooka, which is the image I used to use a lot. I've never shot a bazooka myself. I imagine it's nothing like this, but you want to get your shin way up on your shoulder and then clamp it down, squeeze it down against your shoulder, and then with your blocks underneath your hands, can you push your arms straight, pull your left heel towards you, and then with that deep belly strength, lift it up in the air. The blocks are a huge help. Switch. Left shin on the shoulder like a backpack strap or a giant beam, something heavy on your shoulder. And squeeze it with your hamstring muscle. Squeeze that leg against your shoulder. Punch the blocks down into the floor. Suction your right leg back and lift it up. La, 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 la. And down we go. Set the two blocks aside. Come on to elbows and knees. Cat-cow. Outer wrist heavy just like before. Aim all 10 fingertips towards the sky. Tuck your toes under and try to shove the mat forward with your forearms. Find elbow dog. Now if you have a wall nearby, or if you've got good yoga chops, just take a leg up in the air I don't care which leg. When you look to your lifted fingers, and just play with one leg up, one leg down. How much can you split the legs? How much leg splitting? How much pelvic half, switch legs? How much pelvic half movement? And then maybe if you want, you take a little float up or take a big kick up, only if you've got a wall, into Pincha Mayurasana. Try each leg leading. I don't care which leg goes first, but you try them both. Pause in kneeling. Come to kneeling standing, and you can place a block to the right as you step your right foot out to the right. I call this like the front row of the high school football picture, and like your block is your helmet there. Block, underhand, or simply grab your ankle. Roll your left shoulder back. Push with the right foot into the floor to send more weight to the left. Left hand behind head. Elbow way back. Heart shining towards the sky. Head supported by hand. Maybe left arm goes straight. Switch sides. So pure side bending if you can. So watch the tendency for the upper side of you, in this case your right side, to roll forward. If anything, roll that right side back. Hand behind head, hand supporting head. Can let head rest in the hand or use the hand to turn the head, reach the elbow. And same with the hip, the pelvic halves, right? That right hip point, narrowing and lifting. Nope, narrowing and diving down, and rolling forward. And the left hip point is lifting and wrapping back and going wide. Push with that left foot. Maybe straighten the arm. So to disassemble this shape, bring your two hands down in front of you and peek at your left foot. Can you swing the heel so it points behind you now? So probably that left leg is straight out to the side. If you tuck your right toes under, bring your hips back. And I've got my hands far enough forward that I could push the weight back into my right foot and lift the knee up. And flirt with like a half squat. I'm not actually going into the half squat though. What I'd like to do, if your right knee lets you, is you put that knee on the floor, untuck the toes, sit down inside of it. So right leg is internally rotated. If you come straight forward, it's going to be some juice for the inner left thigh. We did a lot of hugging in of the legs. So finding some length. Now some releasing. And I'm going to keep walking my torso over to that left leg. Right belly, right nipple sweeping across. How much of the right side of you can you bring around? Bring around to the left. Left hand can be like a kickstand. stay as you are if you like, or you can keep the torso over there to the left, but sweep the left side under you now. So left arm is in front of you, twisting left side ribs under. Reaching, you could like pull right elbow back, pull the right arm back, like that right hand is next to the shoulder like a cobra hand kind of thing, but squeeze the shoulder back. Keep walking left hand forward and roll the right side back. And then maybe hand holds head again. And maybe right arm goes long again. Maybe right hand catches left foot. Maybe left hand does too. Maybe not for years or lifetimes from now. That's legit. A few breaths. Coming up when you're ready. And if you squeeze the right knee in a little bit and put the left foot on the floor, this is a shape we did long ago in the beginning of class. How does it feel now? Like no big deal, I hope? Let's switch. Come to hands and knees, maybe a cat-cow. And then step that right foot out to the right, so the heel is maybe in line with your left knee. Right toes pointing straight ahead. Tuck your left toes under and take your hips back. And then do this little teeter-totter on your left toes where you can send both groins back as the left knee lifts up. So like both groins reach back, tail reaches back. And then left knee lowers, untuck left toes, sit down inside of left foot. Of course, you could put a blanket under there. I didn't say that on the first side. I could have. Come straight ahead. And make no assumptions about your second side based on your experience of your first side, because that's just outright prejudice. Don't want to do it to others. Don't want to do it to ourselves. Don't want to do it. No prejudging. How unsophisticated and unevolved is that? Creep your hands, your torso around to the right. Continue to invite more and more of the left side of you to come along. The longer your left side can become, the more available going to the right becomes. And left side from like outer hip, side of the pelvis, side of the waist, side of the ribs, side of the shoulder. And we want all this length, left side length, not only to get over to the right, but then when we start to twist it, I'm going to wait a second before I twist because I've got something quite yummy happening in a place in my right hamstring that I don't get very often. So I'm going to hang out and meet this new place with a loving, open awareness. Hello. Thanks for showing up. Eventually, though, the right side scoops under. Bring your right arm in front of you. Reach it way out in front of you. Keep leaning and diving to the right. Roll left shoulder back. You get your cobra hand, left hand, palm, jazz hand, Fosse hand, shining forward to squeeze the left shoulder back, twist back and to the left, and maybe left hand catches the head to support. Yeah, this side's harder. Your right hand could also hold your head, by the way. Okay. As you come up, use your hands. Bring left knee in a little bit more to the midline. Bend the right knee. Let's just pause in this little, whatever this is. And then pluck your left foot out from behind you. You may be done, washed and rinsed and spun. You could come right into Shavasana. If there's something else you need, please take it, please do it. I'm just gonna lay my bones on the floor and actually take note of how easily it is to let go here. So if you need lumbar support, you could put that folded blanket under your knees. You could rest with knees bent, feet on the floor. And I'm just feeling into, even though there's so much up right now, up on the planet, up in our country, that I can let go, I can drop. And noticing any change, all the change from our first check-in, from the Annamaya Kosha, the physical sheath, I remember now, all the way to the bliss sheath, the Anandamaya Kosha. So all the variables of the way the body feels, to how does the breath and energy body feel, how does the mind feel? What's the wisdom body like? Is there a deeper knowing of peace? And as you rest, feel into the inner refuge, the only refuge. And the inner refuge is the place where I know that even in illness, that I can connect with a sense of being well and healthy. Even in heartbreak, I can feel the capacity for love and fullness of heart. Even in turbulent times, I can come into this inner refuge, this only refuge, and feel peace. And I wish that for all of you. I wish that for all beings. So whatever joy, whatever peace, whatever goodness you have here now, please wish that for all beings. And whatever discomfort you might be enduring, if you feel brave enough, called enough, stable enough to, my practice these days in moments of pain is may all the pain of all the beings fall upon me. I wish for you a healthy body, a happy heart, and a peaceful mind. Thank you. I love you. Namaste.